when it comes to former President Donald Trump, looks like for some Republicans, it is out of sight, out of mind. GOP support for the former president running for president again has fallen 20 points since September. That's according to a new survey from Echelon Insights that found only 45% of Republicans actually want to see Trump run for election again in 2024. That is down from 65% in December.
So the data also found 57% of voters want to ban Trump actually from holding office again. So Democratic strategist, CEO of Pine Street Strategies, Don Calloway, White House reporter for Politico, Gabby Orr, they're here back to weigh in. Gabby, this is a really fascinating dynamic because on the one hand, yeah, there might have been a drop here. And look, take all the grains of salt available whenever it comes to the polling, but it's worth something, at least in terms of talking about. And at the same time, Trump is the single most popular figure in the Republican Party. So how does that work, right? Where you have some who say, don't want to run again. At the same time, you have diehards, probably about 2/3 of the entire party, maybe even more, maybe 75% at this point, who only want to see Trump, or at least Trump saying he won't run and then appoint his own successor. So just how is that going to work in the future?
Yeah, well, look, I think there's a simple explanation for the significant drop that we saw in support for a 2024 run by Trump in this poll. And that's the fact that the president has been, out of the public eye for 2 weeks now. And people have gotten a relief from the constant tweeting, the, saturation of the media, the helicopter talk. There's so many things that the former president did every single day that just dominated the media landscape. And it basically forced his way into Americans' living rooms, and that's not happening right now. And I think to some extent, there's sort of a collective relief, even among his own supporters, who often said they supported his policies, they loved the way that he would talk and his dominance over the party, but at the end of the day, they didn't like his personality or the way that he behaved, or they didn't think that he was a man of character. And so to have that kind of break, I think for a lot of Republicans, it's almost like they didn't know that they needed this, but now that they have it, it's a welcome development. So I think you'll probably see that trend follow. And just to follow up on that, though, as you said, Sagar, it's so important to not confuse that with the influence that the former president still wields over the Republican Party. There was a poll in Axios this morning that showed that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Kevin McCarthy are both far more popular among Republican voters than Senator McConnell and Representative Cheney. I mean, that says a lot about the influence that former President Trump still wields over the Republican Party.
Very key.
I'll take none of the above with that list of options there of those politicians. Don, we had 4 years of Trump where he'd do something horrible and outrageous, and there'd be a lot of commentary about this time is different. The walls are closing in, right? How many times did we read that headline? Yeah. And in the end, his base stayed with him no matter what he did, no matter how ugly it was. He'd lose a few points and he'd bounce right back. Do you think that the Capitol riots actually shook some people loose? Or do you think it's more what Gabby and Sagar are saying, that basically now that he's not tweeting, he's not in your living room every day, people are kind of like, maybe I'm ready to move on?
I think it's a little bit of both. I do think the Capitol insurrection was a turning point in a whole lot of people's minds, probably a whole lot of people who still voted for Trump because of their tax cuts or because of the judicial nominations, but didn't approve of the character over these last 4 years. I hope that their minds were flipped with January 6th. You kind of forget about it, and then you saw the officer's funeral the other day. So I hope that really solidified in a lot of folks' minds. But at the end of the day, 45% of Republicans, even if that has fallen down to 45% interested in seeing him run again, that's at least 45% who would still consider voting for him. And that means he would win a crowded Republican primary going away once again. So he will not be a non-entity or no longer cease to be a problem for the Republican Party for a long time. He is still a presence to stay, even as his support drops, because you still have ambitious politicians who would want to challenge him. You still have the Marco Rubios, the Josh Hawleys, the Kristi Noems, the Nikki Haley's, who are not going to give this thing a pass. And he still holds that critical mass within the Republican Party, particularly if that primary becomes more fractured. So unless he is banned from running for office, and I don't see how you do that short of Senate conviction, he's still going to be a problem for some time to come.
100% right. You know, Gabby, this is a thing I'm fascinated in. You covered Trump for a long time. He seems to have discovered that he can not actually do that much and still have immense impact, like he did with Kelly Ward, called Marjorie Taylor Greene. He said he's going to be meeting with her later, obviously offering his tacit support. Do you expect him to see him doing that in the coming, months and years, basically settling scores and inserting himself where he wants to, but with a little bit less profile?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And just based on my own conversations with those who kind of still have his ear and are talking to him daily, it seems, at least for now, that that's his intention and his desire for the next few months, if not, through the 2022 midterms, that he'll kind of keep a low profile, focus on boosting Republican candidates and primary challengers that he really wants to back. But you aren't going to see him out there, weekly doing these campaign rallies that he did for all 4.5 years through his campaign and then through his presidency. It will definitely be a lower profile that the former president will probably try to keep at least until he decides whether he wants to run again in 2024.
Yeah, well, this guy cannot resist the limelight. So I have no doubt that is not going to last for very long. Don, let me ask you this. How do you think Democrats should feel about if he does run again? I think you're right. All very good chance he would win the Republican primary again. Do you think they feel like he'd be easy to beat again? Or do you feel like that would be a real threat and that he could potentially win the White House once again if he did run in 2024?
Oh, he's very much as much of a problem as he is for Republicans in winning the primary. He is that much, if not more, of a problem for Democrats in winning a general election in November. At any given moment, this country is a center-right or maybe barely center-left on some social issues. And they're always going to be that independent group, that group of suburban voters, that's that group of soccer moms who could be swayed based upon how the economy is going or based upon what the public perception of Joe Biden is. And at Joe Biden's age, it will be more of a perception of his competency and his capability more than a perception of character. So if we get into a situation where the economics are looking precarious, we're always just one terrorist attack or foreign global event away from the global perception of our president changing. And at that point, anybody is able to win a general election, the Dem nominee or the Republican nominee, based upon what's happening in the world. And Donald Trump is a formidable character until the day he just clearly decides to leave politics alone. And that has not happened yet.
100%. A very insightful point there, Don. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate your insights today.
Thanks, Kay.
Thanks, guys.
Coming up, new polling from Gallup. It shows that most Americans believe their financial situation has worsened over the last year. Gallup's editor-in-chief is going to discuss those details when Rising continues.